Hello, so today we will analyze round 4 of the Metro East Summer Chess Bonanza. This is the second day, 3 rounds per day, there's 6 rounds, so let's get right into it. I go e4, my opponent goes for c6, the Caro-Kann defense, I go d4, and my opponent goes d5. I play the exchange Caro-Kann and play bishop to d3. After this move, my opponent goes for knight to c6, one of the most common moves, and here c3 is the best response because if you defend with the knight, there's just knight to b4 in some variations. Maybe like bishop to g4 is better. But anyway, c3 is the way to go here. My opponent goes for knight to f6, and I recently learned this new opening against knight to f6, and that is the move bishop to f4 instead of knight to f3. Bishop to f4 because I noticed in my games every time I play knight to f3, my opponent would go bishop to g4. So what if bishop to f4, not developing the knight? They go bishop to g4, but now I just go queen to b3, attacking this pawn. My opponent goes for queen to b6, and here I just go h3. I want them to take here because after takes, I like this endgame for myself here because I get the open a file. I can play b4 in the future. I can put a knight on b3, put a knight on f3, and this is going to be very nice for me. My opponent goes for bishop to h5, moving the bishop. I go knight to d2. My opponent goes e6, following their Caro-Kann setup, maybe developing the bishop to e7 or even potentially g6, which is a terrible place. But anyway, I just go knight g f3. My opponent goes for bishop to e7. Usually the bishop goes here, but now I have a bishop on f4, so I can just take that. So they go bishop d7, castles, and here I go rook fe1. Now after this move, we are in an interesting middle game here, where I can go into an endgame anytime I want, and so can my opponent. But there's not really much an advantage for either side here, because nothing is going on yet. There's no real weaknesses in both sides here, and it's relatively drawish right now. My opponent goes for rook fc8, putting the rook on the c file, maybe trying to get a knight to c4. And here I take a little bit of time here to think about what I want to do. Do I go into an endgame, or maybe try to set up an attack on the king side with this very strong bishop? Or I could also play in the queen side in some variations, but I'm looking at either an attack or an endgame. And I decided that I don't think I should go for an attack here because my opponent does have a lot of pieces defending their king, and I'd have to drop the queen back to like c2 or d1, pinning the knight here, and in either case it's bad because queen to c2, there's just knight takes. I mean, a pin here, not knight takes now, but definitely a pin. Oh wait, yeah, there is knight takes if I go here. Oh wait, there isn't. Oh wait, no, just this move. Okay, never mind. Anyway, I go for queen takes b6 here, going into the endgame, and I'm not really sure if I'm better or not, because on one hand, yes, my opponent does have this terrible structure, but how will I exploit it? There's not much of a real way to exploit it here, because I can't go here because there's a rook there. And on top of that, my knight can't really go to c5 or a5 here because of this b pawn. But I decided to go into this endgame here because I want to trade off these pieces and then go into this endgame with just kings here and then try to win this pawn. That's why I wanted to go into this endgame. So I play knight to e5. Knight to e5, centralizing the knight. Obviously, I don't want to take because then they just take back with the pawn. But I want to get the knight here to prevent the bishop from going to g6. My opponent takes, and I take back with the bishop. Now, bishop takes e5 is better than d takes e5 because d takes e5 here, first of all, limits my bishop. Second, it's this pawn is a little weak. I'd have to drop the bishop to a passive spot and then play f4, which is not really good. But anyway, after I take back with the bishop, my opponent goes for bishop to g6. And here I have two options. Either to take or play bishop to b5. And I don't really know what to do here. Excuse me. I don't really know what to do here because yes, I can take, but like I do lose my very important bishop that was freezing the pawn here, and bishop to b5 is like, what does it do? It freezes his pawn, I guess, but really there's no way to make progress here for either side. I decided to play bishop to b5 because I couldn't really find another move. I spent like 10 minutes on this move. My opponent plays h6 here. H6, maybe with an idea to put a, maybe just to like have a safe spot for the bishop because it is very nice on this diagonal here. And I decided to take. Now a better plan here was a4 here, and then like after let's say bishop to c2, just rook ec1. Let's say the bishop drops back, and then what do you do from here? Hmm. I think it's to maybe push the queenside pawns here. I don't know. But anyway, I played bishop to b5, and I didn't really want to play a4 in some variations here because after the bishop goes here, my rook is stuck on the a file. I don't really want a rook on being stuck on the a file, so I decided to take this bishop. I mean this knight with an idea that if they take it like this, I get a knight here to this file, and if they take like this, which is what happened in the game, okay, we have some doubled pawns over here, and I noticed something cool here. If I manage to trade off one of these two pawns, my opponent will have so much weaknesses here in terms of pawn structure. Like if I remove this pawn, then I have this pawn, I guess, and then there's these four pawns here and two pawns here, and especially if I remove this pawn, then this pawn will be terrible. Now I was looking at, and then I decided. So I was looking at f4. Wait. I was looking at f4. I was looking at like h4 in some lines, and g5, g4, and then I was looking at like a3, trying to free up my rook here. But ultimately, I decided that after takes takes to go with f4. I'm trying to go here after g4. My opponent goes for bishop d6, hitting the pawn, and here I decided to play g3 since there's no really good way to defend this pawn here. If I go rook to f1 here, this is just terrible here because of the fact that they can play e5 in some after like wait, yeah, they can't play e5. Sorry, they can play e5 in some lines, and like king to h8 is the best move, and then like putting a rook here, and yeah. So I decided to play g3 here because I wanted to keep the rook on the e file here, and keep this pawn defended, prevent e5. I was looking at this during the game. I was really annoyed at this push, but I guess it does weaken this pawn, but there's no real way to exploit it. My opponent goes for h5, and their threat is to go h4. So I play h4 myself, and this position is starting to look very drawish here, and I decided to after my opponent played king to h7, I played king to h2 because their idea is to put a rook on the g file here. So I don't really want that, so I decided that okay, let's play king to h2 here, so that in the future I can bring a rook to the g file as well, and then maybe bring a rook to e3 to further defend this pawn. My opponent goes for king to h6. I didn't really know what the idea of this move is, king to h6. I was trying to look at the idea here. I really couldn't figure it out. I guess it was to get out of this pin in the future, this diagonal. I don't know. I go a3 here because I want to free up this rook on a1 here. And my opponent goes for rook to a5, so I drop back to f1. And now my opponent plays bishop to f5. And this is probably my favorite move that I played during the game. You can pause the video. I spent quite some time on this move, trying to figure out a plan here, because I know their plan is involving some sacrifice, not some sacrifice, but to double up on the G file, uh, and then they're going to try to get some massive advantage here. Maybe try to take in some variations, and after, let's say my rook is defending, take this, right? I play one of my favorite moves, rook to e3. This is my favorite move of the game. This serves so much purposes. Uh, so I was looking at, before we get into why rook to e3 is my favorite. Let's get into bishop to h3. One of the moves I was looking at. Now I didn't like this because of the fact that what if they just not what if they just don't trade? I thought this was worse for me here because my bishop's just here. I really want it here, and so I was like, okay, let's play rook to e3. Now the idea of this move is to first of all uh try to trade off the bishops like this, right? Second, double up on the e file over here, and then another purpose here is that when these bishops are traded, right? Maybe I can bring another rook to e3 and defend the pawn like this. And that is one of my favorite moves. It's such a flexible move here, and it's still preventing this push here, defending this pawn. So yeah, it's a very nice move. My opponent goes for rook a8 here. I decided to go rook e1 first before going bishop to d3, because then if I went bishop to d3 immediately, they would just take, and play e5. This is what it would look like. E5, and oh, I did not see the fact that I could just take this one. But anyway, I really just didn't like the fact that they could play e5. So I played rook a e1, but I didn't spot the fact that that pawn was a, but it's fine. Rook a e1 here, and after rook g8, I went here immediately. Takes. And it was at this point that my opponent plays b5. b5 here, and okay, well, doesn't that just weaken the square? And but they can play b6 in some variations, and I'm looking at this, and after knight to b3, b6, these pawns are starting to look a little weaker than before, because now they're closer to my camp. So I can definitely exploit this with the king once I trade off more pieces. Note that this pawn is doing such a good job. If it ever moves, then I can get a knight to e5 here. I play knight to c1 here, and the idea is the following. I'm going to play rook to f3, knight to d3, and then this rook on e1 is going to go to e3. And what that does is, first of all, coincidentally puts all my pieces in the third rank. Second, defends this pawn, prevents the e-file push, and now the knight is defending this pawn because let's just play some random moves first, and then like this, this, there might just be some bishop takes f4 in some variations here. Not right now, but I was definitely looking at this motive here, but just bishop takes f4 is immediately better here. Apparently rook g2, and if I go here, there's just rook g1, and there's a mate incoming. Whoa, that's crazy. But I was looking at this specific tactic here, where they pin my rook here, and now they have a lot of pressure here. So that's what my deal with knight to c1 is. My opponent goes rook to g4, rook f3. Now I play rook f3, continuing the plan, and they go rook g8, which is a little bit of a weird move. Like, okay, so when my opponent played rook g4 after rook f3, I was ready to see this move, so that I was immediately just gonna not go there, knight to d3 here, and then go here. That's what my whole plan was. But they played rook gg8. Now I think the idea of this move is to bring both rooks to the queen side here, and The thing is, because of this Nike pawn structure here, they can never push b5. I mean b4. And now I go knight to d3, continuing the plan here, just bringing the knight to a better location. And I never really want to go here because like takes, I get some weaknesses. They get some open files here. So I never really want to go here. Now they play f5 here. And this is like another moment where I took so much time here. It's because if I go here and then they take, bishop takes, this is it. This just looks like a draw because there's no real way to make progress here. There is no open file. If you look close, there's no open file. It's all half open. That's so crazy, right? You know, all files are closed. There's only been one pawn ever exchanged, and we're in the end game now. So knight to e5 was out of the question because I didn't want a draw that early. Right, it's the first round. I wanted to play for a win, just like my opponent. So I decided to go king to g2, and I noticed that these pawns are kind of weak. So what if we just brought our king to the queen side in advance, so that maybe in the future, when I trade off all of the pieces, I'm definitely going to be better here. Excuse me. My opponent goes for king to g7. And we both just make a run for it with our kings. King to f2, king to f6, king to e2, king to e7, king to d2, and now my opponent plays rook g4. And again, I have the choice to go knight to e5, but I'm never going there unless I really think it's a draw. I go rook e3. My opponent goes rook a g8, and then my opponent brings the rook to the c file. I'm like, okay, now we have the king to b3 here. I like I played these moves in like seconds. But like I was also double checking to make sure there wasn't any blunders. Anyway, my opponent goes rook g8, and they're just shuffling pieces or something here. There's no real way to make progress. Rook e1, rook rook c4, preventing my king from going there in some variations. Rook a1, rook a8, preventing a4 in some lines. I go rook e1, king to d7 here, rook fe3, king to c6 here. And I didn't really see a way to make progress here. Like at this point, we were just shuffling pieces. And here, I finally decided to go knight to e5. Takes, and this endgame is just a complete draw. There is no way to win this for either side. Unless, unless one of us blunders. And I was waiting for that. King to d6. I go rook 1 e3 here, defending this and this. My opponent goes for rook c7. I go king to b4. They go rook c4 here. The idea is that if I take, rook c4 is a very nice move. And now if I take, uh, they were trying to be sneaky. They were going to play king to c7. This is what I saw for them here, and I thought there was no way to stop mate, but apparently there's just b4. But still, this is losing because I'm down a lot of material. But apparently in this variation, they had rook to a5 check, king takes b6, and rook a8. And here, the rook goes there, and then like because this whole board is so closed, no one can stop these rooks over here, and it's going to be a ladder mate. So anyway, I go king to b3. My opponent was trying to be sneaky there, setting up a trap, which is very clever. My opponent goes for king to c7. And we're shuffling pieces. I go rook e1. We're just shuffling pieces. He attacks the pawn. I defend it. He goes king d7, king c2, rook c6, setting up another trap here. And that is, if I just play any other move, they're just going to have f6. And they're winning because my rook is trapped. So, okay, let's go rook d3. Still defending the pawn and getting off that file. I was expecting to see this, try, but it's still a draw. Even if this is a weak pawn, there's nothing here really. I go rook d3. Opponent goes rook c7, rook de3 again, rook a8, king to b3, king to d6, rook e1, rook g8. I go rook 5 e3. My opponent goes rook g4. I go king to b4, attacking the pawn once again. They defend the pawn with king to c6. I played king to b3. Opponent goes rook g8, and here rook to a1. And this is just a draw. I think I offered a draw about this about I think it was this moment in the game that I offered a draw, and my opponent said that he wanted to try a little bit, so he did. My opponent played rook a8. I played a4. Opponent played a5. A takes, rook takes, king to c2, rook b7, rook to a4, rook to c4 here. I trade and then go into this pawn endgame, which is a dead draw. But you do have to be careful here. You don't want to relax here. Because if you're not careful, like if you let the king go here, they're going and then let them win these two pawns, you're going to lose. Like you can't just confidently, let's say you go here, uh, you're losing in this line because you're very slow here. You have to go here, and then the king moves, and then here, 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 here. You're too slow. They queen with a check. After the king goes here, queen to h6, and you're losing. That that was the That is one of the traps they tried to set up in this pawn endgame with king to c6. I played king to d2 here, so that if you go here, then I'm go here, and I'm winning because I'm a tempo up. Because now if you try to go here, here, if you try to go into the same variation, and then I'm faster, like way faster. I queen first. So if they go here, it's losing. But what if they go here? I spent quite some time here. I thought I didn't really want to go here, complicate the game like this. I didn't really want to go here, so I decided, oh, what if I do a triangulation technique with king to d1 here? Now, if you go here, I'm still going to play this. And if you go here, now I'm going to play king to c2 to prevent it. And if you go here, then after king to d1, uh, king to c1, and then if you push here, then there's c takes. And this is still a dead draw, but I thought the king was just going to be trapped if they played b5. But anyway, king to d2, king to b5, king to d1, king to c6, king to b5. And the position did repeat 3 times here, but I didn't notice it. Instead, my opponent offered a draw, and I just accepted it because there's no real way to make progress in this position. That is the end of round 4 here. Uh, so definitely a nice game. My favorite moment here was when I played this move. Uh, where is it? Rook Rook e3. This is my favorite move of the game because it serves a lot of purposes, like doubling up on the e file, trying to trade off bishops like this, and uh, it all came to a draw. I mean, I think f5 was the move that made it a draw because the position, it's a rook ending, but there's no open files. It's only half open lines or files. Takes, and then when I finally tried to make progress here with that a4 push, it still ended up being a draw. And note that I really want to take here because if I just played like rook to a1, they were going to get some initiative here with these two rooks, and I didn't really want that, so I just took, and we ended up getting a draw. That is the end of round number 4 in the Metro East Summer Chess Bonanza 2, and bye.